of 1FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. Mr. Bob Pollock from the Extension joins us this morning, as he does each Friday morning. You can call Bob and ask him a question if you'd like. 479-1160 or 349-WCCS, and he will be happy to speak with you this morning and answer your questions. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, voted best personal injury law firm in the Best of Indiana County contest. Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
It is time for us to put out our things for our hummingbirds. I haven't looked at the hummingbird map, but I assume they're getting further north and making their way here, and they won't be long till they're here.
True.
And birds are, they're making their nests wherever they do. And they're making a mess of it in some places as well. But it's those signs of spring that we look for. And the signs of spring that we look for are flower beds. And people like to plant them and make the houses look all pretty and everything. Greenhouses are full of plants and flowers right now. And so folks are doing that, but there are some things that we should do, especially at this time of the year, to protect our flowers when we put them out. If we're already putting them out, covering them when we get frost and things of that nature. So let's talk a little bit about making a flower bed around the house, especially in a place where maybe you have not had a flower bed before. People might pull out a shrub and say, I've got this nice little patch of dirt there in front of the house. What should I do with it? And flowers might be the answer.
That's a possibility for sure.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we'll plant them in containers of various sizes, shapes, and we won't just plant one type of flower in a container. We'll use multiple species and colors and combinations to really make those a showpiece. Or if we're planting them in beds, we'll do a border. Oftentimes we'll add just maybe to add some color to that shrub border. And, we can, those annual flowers, we just need to look at the flowers that we want to plant there. Are they sun-loving? Are they shade-loving? Mm-hmm. What is our soil condition that's in those beds, in those areas? Have we worked that up at all ever since we planted the shrubbery?
Yeah.
Because it could be compacted over time. Is it a mulched bed? Is it unmulched? What kind of mulch is in there? Is it an organic mulch like bark, or is it non-organic? Rocks, stones, that sort of thing. Is there fabric in there?
Yeah.
Are there
those things?
Yeah. Are there things that are going to cause us issues to plant those? We get an idea in our head, no, I might just do that, and then we investigate further, or we actually put the shovel in the ground and find that it might not be as easy as we had thought. Well,
let's talk a little bit about the dirt that you're using. If you're making a flower bed, people might be tempted to just say, potting soil, I'm going to be planting flowers there. I ought to put potting soil down and then put my flowers in there. Into potting soil. Is that the best choice, or is topsoil a better choice, or what should we be planting in a bed outside of the house?
Usually it works best if we're working with the soils that we have. When we add, if we just maybe take soil out and put potting soil in, there's usually a big difference between the native soils that are there and those potting soils, which are primarily peat-based mixtures. Yeah. So they're going to dry out much quicker. They're going to react differently than that native soil that's there.
They're not loamy.
No, they're not. No, they're not, definitely not as loamy, are they? They don't have any clay content whatsoever. So it can be a challenge, to do that. Oftentimes we're better off just trying to plant those plants in the soil that's there, because it will probably not dry out as quickly. We still might have to work it, to loosen it up. We might want to add a little bit of organic matter to that soil that's there, just to help with drainage. Most of these flowers need to have good drainage, right? If we think about them growing in containers where they have usually excellent drainage, as long as there's holes in the container.
Yeah.
We're planting them in a potting soil, which is heavy peat based, very well drained, will hold moisture to a degree, but they drain easily. They need watered often, and those flowers typically do pretty well in that kind of condition. So when we switch that up and we plant some of those plants just in our soils and our beds, usually that soil is going to hold more moisture. It won't dry out as quick. And there's variations to that, of course. But so we just need to think about that and make sure we do have some drainage there, ability, that doesn't, stay wet too long, because the root will probably lose the plants.
Yeah.
What will happen, because the roots will be too damp for too long, and then they won't thrive there.
Yeah.
So we do need to do some preparation, checking that out, and usually the best way to do that's to do a test hole, see what you're working with, and go from there. You might need to add a little bit of, if you have an area that you want to try to plant, it probably would be helpful to do a soil test of that area ahead of time, so that we can see where we are nutrient-wise, pH-wise. As long as we're in that slightly acidic pH, we're going to be fine. And then typically we'll need to add some, use your liquid fertilizers that you normally would if they're in pots. We might be able to back off on that, not use as much or as often. We might be able to water when they need it. Add that in, and then just see how they're doing. If the growth is good, if the color's good, then we might. That's the other thing about our native soils. Typically, they're have the micronutrients. They have nutrients there, versus that potting soil, which doesn't have very much. Right. That's why we have to really use those liquid feeds on a regular basis in containerized plants. In potting soil, because they don't have that storehouse of nutrients. The bank doesn't have much money in it.
Yeah.
So we have to supply those to those plants, versus planting out in a bed, where a lot of that, they'll survive okay there.
Yeah.
With just a little bit of supplemental act.
Yeah. So folks putting flower beds in, ground cover is another thing that they do.
Yep.
I'm going to see if I can't get Nicole Cepas to send me the drawing that they did for Vinegar Hill, with all the ground covers that they're putting in there. There's a lot of juniper type ground cover that they're thinking of putting in there. They're still making decisions there, but that's a great ground cover. But there are certain maintenance things that have to be done with that too, I'm sure. So maybe in a future broadcast we'll talk about that and what might be done for that, which is a hilly area, a very steep hill, as a matter of fact. And obviously, if you have something like that on your lawn or at your house, you don't want to be spending a whole lot of time on that.
Having to do work on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really steep. Mowing it is going to be a problem, and you don't want it to get all weedy and everything. So there are things that you got to think of.
Yeah, and that's an example that's very typical of a lot of places in the county. Either because of your property maybe abuts a road and there's a bank there, and what do you do with that? And there's a number of options, and you have to select the thing that's going to work the best for you. In a lot of cases we do nothing. In other cases we let nature take its course. And then another situation, we're building walls and things to help, reduce the slope, to help, more permanent care of that with less maintenance.
2 or 3 times a year we're out there with the string trimmer and
Yes.
knocking that
Whacking
down.
the weeds.
And that's a big, long thing. I remember when I was growing up, a guy had a really tall, steep embankment, and he always tied the rope onto the mower handle and was pulling up and down. and it never looked right because you can't do it. You're not gonna get that the way that you want it to. So yeah, people thinking about stuff like that, and we'll get into it next
Some
week.
people use goats for that, right?
That's what they
Keep
did
the
on Vinegar
vegeta-
Hill last year. As a
They
matter
did
of
do
fact.
that. Yep, for a period of time. There's other people that put their goats out there on a regular basis to do that.
Oh, I was gonna say-
Because they already, they're raising the goats. They have them there. They have to eat.
Yeah,
And so they got to work to earn their keep too.
it is the perfect combination there. I have goats, I have grass. Let's put them together and see what we can do. You could probably make a really rude type of rhyme there. All right, let's move along. Thank you, Bob.
You're
It's
going to have that thought in your head all day today, aren't you?
it's really been that kind of a morning. It is Indiana in the morning. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com.